Hello, I'm Dr. Hulsebus, and welcome to another edition of the ICA Sports and Science Fitness Council podcast. If you listen to these podcasts, you know I always struggle with that lengthy title, but we're back here today, and we have a special guest today coming to join us, Kahla. And Kahla, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us where you live and where you reside, and how you came to hear about this podcast.
Sure. So my name's Kahla Miller. I live in York County, Pennsylvania. I go to Sigafus and Jackson in York. I've actually known Dr. Kevin since I was about 8 years old. I actually seen him when I was younger for my shoulder injury that I had during softball. My grandparents went there when they first opened up in York. So it's just always been where we go. My parents go there. My grandparents went there before they passed away. So it only made sense to stick with which they had great results. My stepdad has a slip disc and stuff, and it's always been where we go. So I've
You
known
know,
Dr. Kevin and Selena for a long time.
I grew up with my dad and grandpa being a chiropractor, and I thought it was weird. And I went to school, people didn't go to the chiropractor, right?
Right,
So I'm so used to that. It was weird to me that, what do you mean you don't go to the chiropractor? And I
right.
realized I was one of the minorities back in the
It,
70s. So
yeah, it's crazy. Even still, there's a lot of kids that they play contact sports and they're not seeing a chiropractor. We don't go as often as we should, but the football players, the hockey play, like a lot of people just don't go, and
yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
yeah, the untapped potential there, the healing is amazing.
Right.
That's kind of why Dr. Jackson thought we should talk. He suggested that maybe you had an incident in your family, maybe that would require a
Oh,
visit to the chiropractor. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. So my son Jordan, he's a wrestler for Trinity High School up in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. It's a Catholic school. Last year he was a freshman. As a freshman, he got a little late started to the game compared to some of these national level wrestlers and stuff. So we always just wanted to do what's right by him, and he wants to wrestle Division 1. So we're like, all right. See, with wrestling and any sport, there's always injuries. We take him to Kevin for an adjustment here and there. And last season, man, I don't know what got into him, but he made a heck of a state run. And we were at regionals, and he had to wrestle this kid that he wrestled in middle school. And the kid's a stud. He's strong. He's a grade older than him. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. So they're wrestling. And naturally, at some point in the match, I forget what period it was in, they both shoot at the same time and just head to head collision. And you heard it. The whole gym was silent. I dropped the F bomb. I'm like, did you hear that? Because I was expecting one of them to fall over. And I was like, there's no way these guys are coming off here without some sort of concussion or something like that. So the next day, I took Jordan to Kevin and showed him the video, and he laughed. He's listen to you. And I'm like, I know, I need to watch my mouth. Sorry. But it caught you off guard because it was that loud of an impact. So we weren't sure if he was going to be able to compete because the concussion protocol and stuff like that. But Kevin did the evaluation. He's like, I think he's fine. Everything's good. He's like, but I want to see him every day. Because in Pennsylvania, I don't know how everybody else's state tournaments are, but our state playoffs are back-to-back weekends. So we have AA and AAA. So you have sectionals, districts, regionals, and then your state tournament. So he actually placed at regionals and qualified for states. And we're like, holy crap, we didn't expect him to even make it out of there. What are we going to do? He cracked his head. Let's make sure we're doing this right. And Kevin's, I want to see him every day until the state tournament. And he adjusted his neck. And I'm telling you, the first adjustment, he was right as rain. I feel good. And then Kevin did like a heat test. And immediately, as soon as the adjustment, the heat evened out across everything. He explained the subconcussive impacts and stuff like that. But long story short, Jordan ended up he went into states ranked, I think, seeded 18th. And he ended up taking home 7th place his freshman year. So,
Awesome. That's pretty
yeah,
awesome for a freshman.
we were going nuts. Because you never know, an impact like that, you're not really sure. Like you go through practice and everything, and just not sure. Sorry, my dogs. You're just not sure what you're going to get after a kid has an impact like that. But I'll tell you what, he came out of there. He knocked out I think it was like the number 7 kid first. Then it was the number 6 kid. Then it was the number 8 kid. And we're like, holy crap, he's placing.
Here we go. Here we
If you
go.
know anything about wrestling, Pennsylvania is it.
Yep.
We're thick. Kevin had him tuned up, and He was ready to rip.
So you talked about shooting for the leg, because I had to wrestle in high school because I didn't like wrestling, but I wanted to play defense, and our defensive football coach was the
Yep.
wrestling coach, so you had to wrestle. And
Yep.
shooting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you see a leg, and you're like going to shoot down and try to grab that leg and wrap up the wrestler.
Yep.
So it's an aggressive move where you're doing a
Yeah.
downward angle going right to the leg, and I don't remember ever seeing two people try at the same time and collide
Oh,
like that in my years.
it's
So
crazy. I feel like it's the higher level wrestlers that end up doing that. It happens all over the place, but I feel like the more aggressive the kids are getting, and you get into the high school and higher level high school matches and stuff, you're seeing a lot of the timing issues and stuff like that. He actually had his 2 front teeth knocked out at one point too. Same thing. He went in for a blast double, and the other kid went for an ankle pick, and the kid's downward trajectory like this, and then him coming like this. It was just the perfect storm. Pushed
sure.
his two front teeth straight back. And I was like standing there, like catching blood in my hands. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do with this. Somebody help.
Wow.
So we've had our fair share of facial injuries and stuff like that. And we always make sure chiropractor is the first place we go. It just makes sense. You can go to your primary care physician, but all they're going to do is give you a note and say you're done for a couple days and go through it. And there's really no adjustments made or anything like that. And all the research I've done, your neck is a shock absorber. And if you're not fixing that, what do you do?
Too, about Dr. Jackson is really big on this too. But last night we talked, and it's about the post check. It's like, okay, you do chiropractic care, then you do a post check to make sure you got it, because maybe there's something else. And I tell my young chiropractors that when you have a high school or middle school age athlete, there's only one post test you need to do, and that's ask mom, because nobody knows that athlete better than mom. Yep. So when you said that, you gave that first adjustment, you knew he was already getting better. I said, oh, he passed the mom test, because nobody knows the athlete better than mom.
Like it's cool because I like learning different things, and I probably went down the deepest rabbit hole you can go on the subconcussive impacts, because I've never heard of them. And you always hear people say, oh, mild concussion this or severe concussion that. And the further you research, it's just a concussion or a TBI or whatever the case may be. And you either have a concussion or you don't, or you have a subconcussive impact, or, it's crazy how misinformed a lot of people really are when it comes to this kind of stuff. And like I said, first place we'll always go is the chiropractor.
As you talked about going to the medical physician, and you were no athletic trainer there told you to go see the chiropractor the next day.
Yeah.
No family physician was going to tell you to check with the chiropractor.
Nope.
And it's other moms, it's other dads, and other athletes that gets our message out. And that's why we have this Sports and Fitness Science Council podcast. Right. Because you can just tell by your expressions and your face and your emotions that you knew this is the right thing to do, and you knew that your son got better. And and if you ever saw a kid get a concussion anywhere else, you're going to walk up and tell him, I know what to do.
Yeah, well, for sure. And in wrestling, you're getting bent into pretzels sometimes, and your knee's not supposed to go that way. No. So it just makes sense to have at least a semi-routine visit to put everything back in place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I talk a lot about with athletes how important it is to maybe go in before the season starts, getting a baseline screening so we know when there is an injury, we have a plan. And I always tell the moms and dads, if you have a plan, you never need it. So let's have a great plan. Right. So I tell you, as a chiropractor, we love and appreciate you being an advocate out there, telling people what they can do, how to get better, because you never know how many lives you've touched and changed by just telling your story. So I'm so proud and happy to have you on our podcast tonight.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And I always finish up with asking my guests if they have any final words they'd like to share with us. So I'll give you that stage right now. Any final words you have?
If all I got to say is if anybody has athletes and you're not seeing the chiropractor at least semi-regularly, you got to get them in there. I think the performance changes alone, it just makes all the difference. Your kid feels good. They perform well, and everybody talks about stay square. It's hard to stay square when your one hip's higher than the other hip, or you're out of whack. So
get you square when you're crooked. Yep.
Exactly. Let them put you back in line.
Well, we have a little bonus treat if you're watching this podcast, because we have been shared the video of this collision. So I'm going to edit the video onto the end of this podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast, great. I'm glad you're there listening. but I would love to have you check out the video either on YouTube or Facebook or on the chiropractic, the ICA page, chiropractic.org. You'll see in the Sports Council, you'll see all of the podcasts that we've done, so you can find out more information there. And if you like what you're hearing, you like what you're seeing, please subscribe and listen in. And on that note, I'm going to let Kahla enjoy her evening, and we are going to call it a night. So thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you. And unless that's it, we're ready to say good night.
Sure, absolutely. Have a good night. I appreciate you having me.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, fuck. Did you hear that?
Quick, Jordan, quick. What hit him?
His head to head.
Really?
Dead ass. He's going to have a I did not tell you how many times he had a walk on. In 8th grade, we were at the hospital for MRI all the time. Yes.